From Unity of Houston, Texas, this is the Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational spiritual community providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress now with Reverend Howard Caesar.
While attending a marriage seminar that was dealing with communication and importance of communication, there was a guy named Tom and his wife, Grace. They were there attending, and they were listening to the instructor in the seminar. And the instructor said, "It is essential that husbands and wives know each other's likes and dislikes." And then he went and addressed the men of the audience and said, "Can you name your wife's favorite flower?" And Tom leaned over and kind of nudged his wife gently and whispered, "It's Pillsbury, isn't it?" Sometimes we just aren't in touch. You know, we are here at this ministry today, hopefully, to better know and understand God, to be attuned, to be in touch, okay? And so we are here seeking to teach you things, to heighten your awareness, and to hopefully have that assist you in going forward as you are on the journey in the path of life, as we all are. We're here to assist one another. Today, I would like to talk about your will. Not your will and testament, not your worldly estate, but really your spiritual estate or your spiritual state. And there are really two kinds of will that are often spoken about in religious terms or spiritual terms, most often at least, and that is the will of God and free will. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. All day long, really, every day of your life, you are using your will to say or to think, yes, I will or I will not. You know, yes, I will or I will not get up. Yes, I won't, and I'm staying in bed. Yes, I will or will not do this or that. Yes, I will or will not shave or shower or dress or eat or go to work or cook or clean or whatever it might be that is before you to do. You're basically saying, yes, I will or I will not. And you're basically saying also, I will or I will not think a certain way. You're saying, whether you realize it or not, in your mind, you're saying, yes, I will or will not speak in certain ways and tones. You know, I will speak kindly or not, and I will be or will not be loving or forgiving, various dimensions and qualities that are wanting to be expressed in and through you. So we all have a personal will, our own kind of individual will, my will. You have your will. And we sometimes say a child or a person has a strong will, and it has to do with they're clear on what they want and when they want, you know, and they're going for it with all their mind and heart, and they have a sense of direction and focus on their will, and they will it. And we know that there are people who have and can have the will to live, that they may be faced with great challenges physically, with an illness or what have you. And that will to live sees them through. We can experience that in people. And we know that there is the will to win, that there are oftentimes athletes that will themselves physically to be able to accomplish great feats. We have a marathon going on today in the city, and there are those people who are, you know, really directing their will physically. And there are many other great feats that are documented, that are the result of the focus, of the energy of will. There's a very powerful thing that is going on in you in the will faculty. It's intended to be, and is actually, a spiritual faculty, your will. And some religions and spiritual paths, you know, list a certain number of faculties or attributes or spiritual abilities that need to be developed and spiritualized. And they give different locations even to where they are physically, that they may be associated with a particular gland or organ or area of the body. For example, the Hopi Indians, you know, they refer to 5 etheric centers. and they have their locations. Love is one of them, and that's centered in or seated in the heart, which of course makes sense. Wisdom is another, and that is in the solar plexus, and of course they have the others. And you're all familiar, most of you, I think, of that the Hindus have the 7 chakras, and those 7 chakras have specific locations, and that the energy is moving on up to the crown chakra through various processes and practices. And what I want to make you aware of is that Charles Fillmore, who was the co-founder of Unity, as a result of years and a great deal of prayer and meditation and reflection and contemplation, he came up with the idea that there was, or was guided to the idea that there are 12 powers within us, 12 spiritual faculties that are needing to be spiritualized in us and purified, if you will. And the reason he came up with 12 is he felt that, and was guided that 12 has some significance symbolically in the Bible, that there are the 12 tribes of Israel, and that there are the 12 disciples that were under the guidance and the energies of the Christ. And so that the Christ within us, the highest dimension of all of us, the Christ within, is always to be directing and guiding the way of those 12 different aspects, abilities, attributes, or powers, faculties, whatever you want to label them. And so, to name a few of those that Charles Fillmore pointed out, the obvious ones would be love and faith, imagination, strength, and others, but of course, will. Will is a faculty. And Charles Fillmore, the co-founder, he called the will the executive faculty, because not only was it important to link your will with thy will be done, scripturally, but it was the will that was saying yes or no to all the other faculties. That's why it's the executive faculty, saying yes or no. Yes, I will be more loving, or no, I won't. Yes, I will have faith, or no, I won't. Yes, I will use my imagination to vision the highest and the best, or no, I'll vision what is limiting, or what have you. And so the will faculty, or power, works hand in hand with all the others. It pulls the trigger, it fires the energy into all the other attributes of love and faith and imagination and strength and what have you. That's why it's called the executive faculty, or power. And it is this will that is always directing the energies, the life energies in you, constructively or destructively, positively or negatively. So it's a very, very important aspect within us all. And some have even called it the king's throne, because it is the seat of choice in every person. It's the seat of choice regarding life and things that come up. The seat of choice regarding your thoughts, your words, your deeds. And so learning to spiritualize the will and have it moving in the direction of good and higher good is very important. And for good to come and into your life and to materialize more in your life, and for spiritual growth to occur, a person has to begin to move from the realm of I can consciousness on into I will, and I will direct this energy positively, constructively in my life. A person can do most anything they set their minds to, right? But the question is, will they? Will they? A person can be a better parent, can be a better spouse, can be a better employee, can be more loving, can be more faith-filled, can be better, but will they? Will you? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. Some people say, yeah, I can change. I can change. I can stop smoking. I can lose weight. I can stop drinking. I can get off drugs. I can do better. But knowing you can do something is never an indication you really will. That's different. You see, it's like you wire a house up for electricity, and you have all the wires running through, and all the wiring has the electricity in it, but you never really throw the switch. It's like knowing that you are wired for something more. You are wired for something greater, something bigger, something, with more potential. The next step as a being. You're wired for it, but you're just not flipping the switch. you know? And we can many times find ourselves there. And so that's why it's so important to get on top of that will faculty in you and know where you are with it. There's a story from one of the books written by Ben Sweetland, who tells a story about a man who came to him, and this man was seeking counseling. He was having a tough time. It was a tale of woe, really. Things weren't working. He was contemplating a divorce, or I'm not divorce, I'm sorry, suicide. Could be the same for some people, you know. Anyway, he said his family would be better off without him. He said if it wasn't for the money that was coming in from his wife's modest job, that they basically would probably be starving. He said, should I die, they would at least have some insurance money and not have the responsibility of worrying about me supporting me. And so he's really down on himself. And so Ben Sweetland sat him down in a form of counseling, and he said, sit down at this desk, gave him a pad and a pen, and he suggested to him, John, suppose that some millionaire would come along and make you a proposition. And it would be, he would tell you that if at the end of 12 months, at the end of a year, you had paid all your bills and you had gotten a job and now had an income, if you were able to do that within 12 months, he would give you $1 million. What would you do? And so he told him to sit down there and map out a plan. And so within an hour, he had developed a logical plan. And so Mr. Sweetland asked him, well, now, why don't you do this? And the man did. And he went, and basically it was less than 12 months, and he had a job, and he had paid off his bills, and he and his wife were now looking to find a modest home. But a total turnaround. What he had done is activated his will faculty, and he had gotten it moving in the right direction. And he'd begun to, you know, flip the switch and move on it. And so sometimes we're in I can't, sometimes we're in I won't, sometimes we're in I can, but we're not willing. And so we have to move and get ourselves to I will, and I will move my will in the direction of that God-given energy of something positive and good, because that's my nature, and that's the nature of the divine. And so there's a big shift in a person's life when they realize that there's a choice in the direction of their movement into I will. You know, and also it's important to realize we cannot really, and we should not impose our will on other people. And sometimes people want to hound another, try and push and pull another into reform and or change. And the response when we're too strong like that in imposing, it's not a good response. It's better if it comes somehow from within. There are other ways. I came across an article that I had actually in my files from Reader's Digest along these lines, and it was a story about a woman, true story, who had quit smoking. And she was kind of proud of herself that, you know, she had smoked for a while and now she had quit. And as a result, she tried to impose her will on her husband to make him quit. And whenever he lit up a cigarette, she would give him a lecture. And she'd say, it's bad for you, and it's bad for the children, it's bad for the dog, it's bad for the drapes, it's bad. And she was right, but it wasn't helping him change. And so one day, while her husband was watching TV, he got up and he went and made himself a cocktail. And then he came back and sat down, and his wife was in the room, and then he lit up a cigarette, and she started in. Smoke, smoke, smoke. And now you're drinking. Drinking and smoking, smoking and drinking. And he just took one big sigh, and he said, yeah, and pretty soon I'm going to start dating again. The story ends by saying this lady realized that that wasn't going to work. Her tone, her method, imposing, and that there are other better methods to help a person along. So let's go a little deeper, if we can, on this idea of will. We said there are basically two kinds, pretty much, you know, God's will and free will. When we say free will, that means my will, or or one's personal will, one's individual use of the faculty of will and how they're directing it. And masters and mystics and spiritual teachers would say essentially this. They would say, there is really only one will in the universe. And that won't be easy for everyone to grasp, but there is one will in the universe. Just as they would say there is one mind in the universe, there is one power in the universe, there is one truth in the universe, there is one intelligence in the universe, there is one life energy in the universe, and we're all using it to some degree, all right? And so each of us in our own spiritual evolution of spiritual consciousness has to decide what degree of the one mind, the one truth, the one life energy, the one will is going to be moving through us. And so the will of every individual is basically some degree or partial accommodation of the expression of the will of God. And so you are accommodating a portion of the will of God as you move it in a direction of the divine or of the highest and best good. Because you see, spiritual growth is about using or appropriating a larger measure of divine will. And the reason we do that is because the will of God is only for something higher, something better, something greater, something more expansive in you. You are held in the mind as made in the image and after the likeness. You are held in the mind of God as so much more than you are currently incorporating or accessing. You are using some of the mind of God. You are using some of the life energy of God. Some of it we misdirect in various ways, and that's often misdirected through the misuse of our will, where we get into the ego and my will versus really accommodating and looking for what is the higher will here. What is the way that the divine wants to move through me? And checking in with that is very important. And so it's important also to realize that, again, as I say, the will of God is only moving for good. And so, you know, the will of God is not that which produces sickness. The will of God is not that which produces war. The will of God is not that which produces death. Life, okay? And how you direct life will produce all of these different things. It's humanity in how it is accessing the energies of God, the mind of God, or separate from it, and separate from a higher will, thy will. All right? So we have this free will, and we have to begin to recognize where it is that we have separated from the divine. We have, and we take ourselves, this is important, we take ourselves out of harmony with God when we accept the idea that things that are evil or bad are coming from God, or that it's some kind of punishment. Bad things are not sent by God, okay? If humanity were really attuned to the true will of God, which is only for a higher good, and realize that God can only do for us what he can do through us. So it's all a through us dynamic. And so if humanity were attuned to the true will of God and accommodating and appropriating it, there would be a world of peace and harmony and no war. But not everybody's there. And so there would be only cooperation. There would only be people living from the golden rule of doing unto another as you would have them do unto you. There would be people helping people everywhere. That's all they'd be thinking about, you know, because you can't give anything away. And so the divine is eternally willing into the world the higher and the greater. For all who would choose to consciously will with the will of God. That's our goal, is to will with the will of God. You understand? So to link my will with the will of God means I'm always going to be willingly pulling the trigger, flipping the switch for something greater and better. That's where my focus will always be. Because if you're asking, thy will be done, you should never be afraid to say that. Because that's always an affirmation that there's something greater of the divine that is wanting to come through. And you're acknowledging that, you're honoring that. And so there's scriptures that will just, passages that bring clarity to this. And so I'll just share a few of them. One is in 1 Chronicles in what is known sometimes as the Old Testament. And he says, know God and serve him with a perfect heart and with a willing mind. Okay, so it's a verse that's really saying, know the divine and serve him with a perfect and willing heart and mind. The psalmist prays the prayer, teach me to do thy will, for thou art my God. Thy spirit is good. Lead me into the land of uprightness. Here's a psalm. And the psalmist, who knows that the nature of God is good, the will of God can only be taking you toward good, and if you link yourself with it, you're going to be fine. The Apostle Paul in Philippians, he says, it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do his good. Jesus taught us to pray, thy will be done in earth as it is in higher realms, heaven. Jesus said, and I love this one, he says, my meat, M-E-A-T, is to do the will of him that sent me and to finish his work. He's saying that which feeds my soul, that which nourishes me, that which gives me energy is to do the will of the divine. And that's what we can learn from. That's what he was modeling. That's what will feed our souls, is to be consciously in the place that says, let thy will be done. Checking in with, inviting in the energies of a higher will in all that we do and are about. Jesus understood how important it was to move beyond personal will, my will. I'm going to do my own thing. And he said it so succinctly in the Gospel of John. He said, I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father which has sent me. He's talking about will. And finally, in also the Gospel of John, Jesus says, this is the Father's will which has sent me, that of all which he hath given me, I should lose nothing. And what he's saying is, God's will for you and me is that we lose out on nothing. That essentially there are infinite gifts that have been buried inside of you and in prisoned splendor, as the poet Browning spoke of it. And it essentially, as you lean into thy will being done, the will of the divine is that you not lose out on who you really are and the life that is meant to be lived. That's what is being said there by Jesus in a beautiful way. So we're here to live a life of God, to think the thoughts of God, to will with the will of God, and to have a mind and a heart that is saying, thy will be done, to have that be an affirmation, to get up in the morning every day deciding that our meat is to be attuned throughout the day to the presence of the divine, to the voice of the divine, to guide our ways, to think through our mind, to see through our eyes, and to link our will with the will of the higher that is wanting to take over in us. And so there is a story that I came across, and actually I've seen several places. It's about a guy who had gone to a midweek service. He had heard about in the lesson all the importance of how God speaks to us and guides us, and if we're willing and all of that. And he went and had coffee and pie with some of the other attendees afterwards, and they talked some more about it. And so when he was ready to get home, he got back in his car. It was about 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and he prayed in his car, God, if you still speak to people, speak to me. I will listen, and I will do my best to follow your lead. So he's driving along, headed home, and all of a sudden he has this strong urge to go stop and buy a gallon of milk. Thought it was crazy, but finally, the urge was strong enough. He got in, went and bought the milk. Then he had this urge to turn down 7th Street. He went on by it, thought this is crazy, but the urge was there, the guidance. So at the next intersection, he turned around, went down 7th Street. Went down a few blocks. He was told to pull over, pulled over, and he was told to go across the street into a particular house. Now, this was not the best of neighborhoods. There were a lot of lights off. He thought, I'm going to wake somebody up. I'm going to make them mad. They're going to think I'm crazy. I'm going with a gallon of milk to the door. But he did. And he even said out loud, God, is this you? It's guiding me here. And so he went and he knocked on the door, and it took a while, and he heard some noise, and the guy came, and he had his jeans and the T-shirt like he had just gotten, thrown some clothes back on. And he looked at him, and And this young man gave him this gallon of milk. And the man took the milk and turned and ran down the hall to his wife. And then the wife came back, and he and the wife, and he was holding a baby now. And they said, we were out of money, and we were just praying in our bedroom that for help. How could we even get milk for our child, our baby? We couldn't even do that. And then the mother said, I prayed for an angel. Are you an angel? And anyway, the whole thing, he ended up, leaving, and with tears in his eyes, just grateful that he had been the answer to these people's prayers, and did so through willingness to listen, willingness to be open, willingness to be in touch with thy will be done through me, use me, okay? Very powerful story, and the point is that we're all wanting to be used. The universe wants to use us. Thy will wants to be done through us. And so there's nothing wrong with affirming again and again every day, thy will be done. If situations come up that are challenging, say, thy will be done. And what you're saying is you're holding for the absolute highest and best outcome possible here. And if it doesn't turn out the way you want it, accept it. There are many wills that are coming into play with things that are happening in the world, and somebody needs to be flipping the switch for the highest and best, and you're doing that. And yours can override others, so keep on going. Realize that. You're in this world to help thy will be done. And if you will, we'll have heaven in earth. Bit by bit, we will get there. And so I want you to join me in this moment and affirm together, all of us out loud, thy will be done. Together? Thy will be done. Again, thy will be done. A third time, thy will be done. So may your will link fully with the will of the divine. It will take you into peace and harmony and fulfillment like you have never known. Go be a light in the world. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. Unity is inclusive, welcoming people of all walks of life in dignity and love. We believe that love, strength, and goodness dwells within you. May we all live in unity with God, humanity, and all of God's creation. And remember, as Reverend Caesar says, life is meant to be good.
One of the things we're proud of at Unity is that we're able to bring international dynamics speakers here to Houston. And I'd like to share a few of our upcoming 2016 lineup. One that we're having that's wonderful is Gabrielle Bernstein, and she is considered and labeled by Oprah Winfrey as the next gen leader. We also have Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. He is the son of Don Miguel Ruiz, who authored the best-selling book, The Four Agreements. And another speaker that we have is John Bradshaw, who pioneered the term inner child. So we have a great lineup, and to learn more about these speakers and other activities and events that are happening here at Unity of Houston, go to our website, unityhouston.org. God bless you all.